Coming up on this edition of Reel to Reel, from castles to cliffs, Connemara Marble and Our Lady of Knock, to Northern Ireland's Cathedral of St. Patrick. These stories and more are just ahead on this special edition dedicated to Catholic Communications' Pilgrimage to Ireland. Hello and welcome to Reel to Reel. I hope you all are having a wonderful post-Thanksgiving weekend and you can sit back tonight and just enjoy a special half hour that we have for you. We've put together tonight's program dedicated to Catholic Communications' Pilgrimage to Ireland. Fathers Gary Daly and Matthew Alcombright serve as our tour guides, and our senior videographer Bill Pecosha produced this spectacular presentation.
Hello, I'm Father Gary Daly.
And I'm Father Matt Alcombright, and we'd like to welcome you to our 2015 pilgrimage to Ireland.
We're here in Galway at the Radisson Blu Hotel, and when we first arrived, we had a great Irish breakfast. So after breakfast, we got back into the bus and off to Bunratty Castle. One of the things about Bunratty Castle is just a little taste of what old Ireland was like, the thatched roof cottages and the turf fires inside and some of the little stores that we get there. Did you enjoy the castle?
Yeah, it's really neat to see how people lived, how these areas were operated under these ruling systems with the people living, and seeing how the people were served and how they lived and how their families were. And it was just very interesting to see the history of Ireland come alive in that castle with all the artifacts, all the tapestries, all the different things that are there.
And then off we were to the beautiful part of Ireland in County Kerry, which is Killarney, known for its beautiful lakes, its parks. We woke up after a good night's sleep and ready to jump into the jaunting car, which is a horse and buggy ride through the beautiful Killarney National Park. And if I remember correctly, our horse's name was?
Our horse's name was Bobby.
Bobby, right. I wanted the whiskey horse so bad, but we ended up with Bobby. And the ride through Killarney was just amazing. And as the many times I've been to Ireland, it was the first time I experienced the horse and buggy ride through the national park. Horsing around in Killarney.
I just remember the morning was so beautiful. I think it was forecasted rain, but worked out for us. And it was an absolutely beautiful morning to just be outside, enjoy the fresh air, and enjoy the beautiful scenery of that area.
And then at the end of the ride was this castle that was there, and we were able to explore that for a little bit. And then back on the bus with our great bus driver, Frank, who brought us around the Dingle Peninsula. I think it's worth talking about Dingle in the sense that the Dingle has a very significant piece to the Diocese of Springfield, because there's a lot of people in the Springfield area who left the Dingle area of Ireland and came to settle in our diocese. And Hungry Hill in Springfield and Our Lady of Hope Parish became their home. But the Blasket Center has a great connection, more especially to the Diocese of Springfield. Michael Carney, who was the last survivor of the Blasket Islands, has just recently passed away. Michael was certainly a legend in Ireland as well as here in Western Massachusetts, and it's certainly unfortunate we didn't have the opportunity to speak with him about our wonderful trip. Michael Carney left the Blasket Islands and went to Dublin, and then Dublin to America, and settled with all the other people who left the Dingle area and went to Springfield, Massachusetts. The people on the pilgrimage really enjoyed seeing the room that had Springfield, Massachusetts on it, with all the artifacts there and the picture of Michael Carney and the map that shows Western Massachusetts and Northern Connecticut.
I thought it was very inspiring, very informative, especially my former parish being Mary Mother of Hope in East Springfield, having many people from Our Lady of Hope at that parish now, having heard the stories of their lives in Dingle, in that area, and hearing the stories of Michael Carney, putting that into perspective and putting it to life, so to speak, was one of my favorite parts.
Day 3 in Ireland. Who would have ever thought day 3 would probably be one of the most memorable days of our trip? Now, when we woke up in the morning, we knew that we were going off to the Aran Islands, and we knew that we were going to have an hour-and-a-half boat ride. But little did we know that the weather was going to be the way it was, and we were dealing with some very severe weather on the Atlantic Ocean. Father Matt, maybe you want to tell us how you enjoyed the boat ride to the Aran Islands.
Well, it's funny. I think I enjoyed it just as much as everybody else did on that boat.
Really? And how was that?
That was with a bag close to my face. It was a rough ride. It was a rough haul, but we made it through. True pilgrims make it through. It was certainly not the best experience, the best boat ride of my life, but we made it to the island of Innismore, and we got there, we stepped off, we got our bearings, and we enjoyed that beautiful island and the history of it.
When we got to the island and we went to St. Bridget's Church for Mass, and I know that I was able to preach that Mass that you celebrated there. Hallelujah. We come with a generous spirit here, and we thank God for this safe journey, and we thank God for all the little gifts that God gives to us along the way. If nothing else, the experience, even though some got sick, the appreciation of what people did in order to find freedom, in order to find a better life, in order to find something more than what they had. I was thinking about my ancestors, my grandparents, and many people's parents and grandparents that came over from Ireland, the potato famine, or Poland, or Italy, and for 3 months they were on a ship. It helped me to appreciate what they went through, and that was really a tough trip. Initially it was cold and rainy, but it lasted for about 5 minutes, and then beautiful sunshine, and to just get our little van ride around the island and learning about how those people survived. And 800 residents on that island, imagine, and the entire island's Catholic. There was a Protestant church here, and it's no longer here anymore, and all 800 inhabitants are Catholic. The priest has this island and 3 churches, and the other 2 islands as well he serves. And he wasn't here today because he was celebrating Sunday Mass at the other island, and he goes overnight there. After we had some lunch and people's stomachs settled and getting their sea legs, we're back to the dock.
Back to the dock for a smooth ride.
Right.
Until about the end. It was a little choppy, but it wasn't as bad. Everybody got home safely.
What a beautiful day we experienced at the Cliffs of Moher. Sunshine, hardly a breeze, and just being able to enjoy the scenery off that cliff onto the Atlantic Ocean.
As one of our pilgrims said once we got to the top, he said, "How can you look at this and not believe in a God?" To look out at the beauty of creation and the beauty, certainly, of those cliffs. Just a spectacular view in all directions. No matter where you looked, it was a beautiful view. Even if you were looking from the cliffs back into the valley where we were, just breathtaking.
So the Cliffs of Moher was a somewhat brief visit. We were probably there for an hour and a half and then off to another castle.
When you look back, everybody says, oh, another castle, but these castles were so unique.
The name of this castle is actually Dungora Castle. It's a 16th century tower house home that's about 500 years old, built and lived in by the O'Hynes clan.
They may all look similar or the same, but when you go inside them and see the different families, their different tapestries, their furniture, some of the stained glass, you see the uniqueness of each one.
And to think that this castle was inhabited only to just very recently, in the sense of that private person just buying the castle and making it her home. And then off we were to Galway. One of the beautiful things about Galway is that it's a town that's very much alive. There's a great history here.
The Pope at the time gave Galway the right to elect a warden, elected by the families here, in essence a mini bishop. So you had the priest in Galway, a warden, and ultimately his route was to the Pope. So they cut out anything in between. The 1500s, warfare starts to change a little bit, and as you get into the 1600s, then it's a change. You've got massive siege cannons come into play, and even though these walls could be 8 foot thick in places, still not thick enough for siege cannons.
The walled city that you don't see in many places in Ireland today, but Galway's a really special place, and some great restaurants, some great pubs, some great music.
Then going after our meal to see the street shows going on, the jugglers and the musicians out on the street all performing, the city just truly becomes alive.
And so beautiful Galway is here, and we're just hoping to enjoy it for the last few hours that we possibly can before we make our trek towards the north. We're looking at day 5 of our pilgrimage to Ireland, and we boarded the bus and went to Connemara, one of the beautiful picturesque area of southern Ireland. And Connemara is noted for its marble, and beautiful marble, 3-4 different colors.
So Connemara is actually quite famous for its marble quarries.
We went to the Connemara marble factory there, and what did you think of that marble?
It was just fascinating to see all the different colors and the different uses that they have, learning how they can be used for not only structural things but light fixtures, and it's just a beautiful stone.
In old libraries you will see marble windows, and marble allows the natural light to pass right through without fading books or documents inside. So cut marble down to 2 or 3 millimeters and you've got yourself a marble window. Isn't that extraordinary?
And of course, our pilgrims did what they do best, and that's shopping. We boarded the bus with about 50 pounds of marble, and off we went to Killimore Abbey, a very beautiful place. And the pilgrims had a wonderful opportunity to tour the grounds, the beautiful gardens, the Victorian castle that's there. And also we had the privilege of celebrating Mass with the sisters.
It was just a beautiful place of welcome, a place of peace, and we experienced that firsthand when we met Sister Magdalena right at the gate.
Also, we learned that the sisters are going back to their original charism of teaching, and what a wonderful opportunity for young people.
We came to Carlmore in 1920. We needed a larger place for the school. We had a school in Belgium and a school in Wexford, and then a school here until 2010. And we closed the school then because we didn't have enough nuns, and the castle needed a lot of repair where the school was actually in situ. We always wanted to continue with education. It's been part of who we are. But it will be better when we have a monastery and when it's all connected. And that and our prayer and our contemplation will be really what we are about more. And we plan to grow, but it's a plan.
Yes.
You know, it's in God's hands really, isn't it?
It is,
Yeah.
certainly is.
Yeah.
And then once we finished our visit there, we boarded the bus and headed over to Dan O'Hara's Heritage and History Center. And the pilgrims had the opportunity to board a wagon pulled by a tractor up to the hill with Dan O'Hara, giving us a little history and little folklore of Ireland.
So as we go down through the turf today, it's like reading a good book. We can read all those things. We can tell the climate we had here 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. We now know that the first people arrived here 7,000 years ago. We find their sites beneath the turf. We find their stone coffins, their ceremonial sites, their ancient calendars.
He was just a great tour guide filled with a lot of wit, a lot of charm, and a lot of stories. To go into the little cottage there, to see the hearth burning, to see how the people would live there, and especially the piece that he did on the turf, and how they get the turf and how they dig the turf and make all that for burning was very interesting, very resourceful, so it was just a wonderful time.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Day 6 of our pilgrimage, what I called the heart of our pilgrimage, and that is to the shrine of Our Lady of Knock in County Mayo. Father Matt, your thoughts, your first time at the beautiful shrine.
Yeah, it was my first time and hopefully not my last. It was such a special place, and you can feel that right when you get off the bus or get out of the car. The holiness, the peace, the prayerfulness of that spot. It's like going to Lourdes and Fatima, going to those sites of the apparition of our Blessed Mother that are just so touching, so moving for people there. You can just see that holiness exuding out of every part of it. It was a blessing to celebrate Mass, the two of us, for not only our pilgrims, for other pilgrims who were joined in the apparition chapel. And what a magnificent experience to be there where our Blessed Lady appeared with John the Evangelist and with Joseph and with the Lamb.
It's interesting that Mary has appeared in every place where there is poverty, where there are very poor people that have very little means. Mary has come to bring them hope. Mary has come to bless them.
The central message of Knock is hope and consolation to the people that you're not alone. We know what you've gone through, if you like, but essentially it's to give trust in the fact that God has a bigger plan for all of us. And I suppose that has developed over the years. And here at Knock itself, as you can see, we have a huge amount of different facilities. But the key in terms of when a pilgrim comes here, and what I call our engine room, is our Chapel of Reconciliation, the confessional. That's our engine room. That's where the miracles happen.
The message of Our Lady is just very powerful, and I just think that the pilgrims felt the presence, and I'm glad that you had that experience, Father Matt, for the very first time. Day 7 of our pilgrimage begins after we board the bus and make our trek through the Inishowen Peninsula, all the way up to Malin Head, the most northern point of Ireland. On a very clear day, one can see the beautiful country of Scotland off the North Atlantic Sea. And so our trip up there was filled with great beauty. We had some very nice weather. I really wanted to bring the people to this very special place, which is Dune Well. There at Dune Well is a mass rock, and that mass rock is very precious to people in this area and throughout Ireland, reminding them of the persecution that existed during those penal days.
People were forced to go to the hillsides if they wanted to have mass. And that's where the mass rocks arose. These were in remote areas where they could put up a sentinel, someone who could warn the priest of the approach of the British to arrest them. The priest dressed as a lay person to remain incognito. And in some occasions, very devout Catholics stepped forward when they were caught and said, "I am the priest," and took the place of the priest and were subsequently put to death to protect the life of the priest.
Father Patrick, who I've been friends with for 32 years now, we went to celebrate Mass at his parish, which is the vigil of the Feast of the Assumption of Mary, and our pilgrims were able to join with his parishioners for that lovely Mass.
To be welcomed in by the parishioners and sitting in their seats, as we are always so protective of the seats that we sit in at Mass, them allowing us to come and to celebrate with them. And it's a true reminder of our universality of the Catholic faith, that we all celebrate the one liturgy, the one faith together. And it was just a beautiful experience, and to be welcomed, but to also pray with that community. Well, thank you, Father Gary, and thank you for joining us on the second installment of our pilgrimage to Ireland, and we'll see you for the third installment from Dublin.
Thank you, and Sláinte.
And joining me now is pilgrimage leader Father Gary Daly. Thanks so much for being with us today, Father.
Thank you, Sharon. Great to be here.
Now, you have led a few pilgrimages for Catholic Communications over the past few years, and you always have a wonderful, enriching experience. And I understand you are planning something for 2016.
Yes, we're planning a pilgrimage from the Diocese of Springfield together with the Catholic Communications Office to Mexico. Particularly to Mexico City and the surrounding areas, visiting the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and also the surrounding areas that are all connected with the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City and just outside the city as well. And then at the end of the trip, we're really hoping to spend some relaxing time in Cancun, at an all-inclusive resort there to end our pilgrimage.
Sounds like a wonderful trip. And how can folks get more information?
Yes, the trip is scheduled right now for October 15th through the 22nd of 2016. We plan on having an information night at some point in the next couple of months or so to get more information, but for right now people can go on iobserve.org to see the flyer, and also you can call the Diocese of Springfield at 413-452-0610 to get additional information with regarding this trip to Mexico.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Father Gary Daly, and we will look forward to your next pilgrimage.
Thank you, Sharon.
Hi, I'm Father Matt Alcombright.
And I'm Father Gary Daly, and we're here for our third and final segment of our journey through Ireland, and we're here just north of Dublin at the Brú na Bóinne Visitor Center, which is the monolithic burial site which dates thousands of years before Christ. Day 8 of our pilgrimage, we traveled into Northern Ireland, and we did a bus tour of Derry.
It's a very different kind of scenery, but the people are just incredibly welcoming. You find that all throughout Ireland. That's the one thing I think that really unites everybody. And Northern Ireland is especially picturesque with the pastures and the farmlands. Just an absolutely beautiful area.
People really seen firsthand the troubles that existed in the north of Ireland, the battle between Catholic and Protestant, and the walls of Derry that are the only walls in Europe that are totally intact. I think the people were really impressed on the pilgrimage with the information that was given to us by our tour guide on that day.
The Bloody Sunday mural behind, which commemorates the killings that happened on these streets on the 30th of January 1972. They happened on your right where the red brick houses are, on your left where the cream apartments are, and on this road in between.
I left you alone with the group as I went off to visit my friends. Maybe you could say to us a little bit about what you saw on that particular part of the trip.
Sure, you left me alone with the group and we went to explore whiskey. That was the highlight of my day, and a highlight of the Pilgrim's Day was the Bushmills Distillery and Factory. And what a beautiful facility to see where this common whiskey, commonly drunk in the United States and all throughout the world, where it's all made right there. Dunluce Castle, just a beautiful picturesque spot. Some say the spot where the inspiration for the Narnia series came from for C.S. Lewis. It was a beautiful castle to behold right on the edge of a cliff, right out in the water. The Giant's Causeway was a great wonder of nature. We took about a 15-minute walk down to the ocean, to the Irish Sea, and looking out over the vast beauty of the ocean, you see the hexagon rock formations that are some of the only in the world, and it's undescribable. You don't know how it's formed, but just another piece of God's hand at work in creation, and for us to behold that great beauty.
So day 9 on our pilgrimage, off we are into Northern Ireland and on our way to Armagh, which is the primatial seat of all of Ireland, with the Catholic Cathedral of St. Patrick's and the Church of Ireland Cathedral of St. Patrick's, just literally 300 yards apart up on two different hills. We had a great treat when we were there, able to concelebrate with the Primate Emeritus, Sean Cardinal Brady. Very cordial, very inviting, and wanting to engage in conversation. Just what a delight to be able to just speak to him about the Universal Church and Pope Francis, also the local church in Ireland.
When I was becoming a priest 50 years ago, a lot of people went to become priests, but now the priests have to be more courageous. It's countercultural. We live in a different era, greatly individualistic, consumer, all of that. But the church has come through tough times before, mass rocks and all of that. The Spirit is with us if we have the humility to acknowledge that and to know that we're not on our own.
We had a little lunch together in Armagh, and then off we were to Dublin. Day 10 of our pilgrimage up to St. Kevin's Monastery in that area of Glendalough dates back from the 6th century when St. Kevin built that monastic site, and many of the buildings from the 10th and 11th century that were there. Just a great place.
To see the life of the church at its beginnings, how the people would create these places of pilgrimage, as we're on a pilgrimage, to come to these places where people of that time would journey to deepen their relationship with God and to be nourished and refreshed, and to walk those grounds that were built so long ago.
What was impressive was to see St. Kevin's Church intact, the graveyard that we walked through, and still 2 people waiting to be buried in that cemetery, and then that cemetery will be closed forever in the sense of a burial spot, and will just be forever remembered throughout the centuries. We made our way back up north to this spot of where we are now in the Brún and Bain Visitor Center, and here learning the ancient history. We looked at St. Kevin, which was back in the 6th century. This is way before Christ.
Absolutely, yeah.
Pretty amazing.
The Neolithic age. And it's impressive just to behold how these things just stay, and to see over time the different groups that would take over these spots and care for them, including the Cistercian monks who would build a spot here and farm these lands. And so it's just a place that's somewhat ever-changing with the people who've cared for it, but something that's been preserved and taken care of up until this day.
We leave here, this very historic place just north of Dublin, and we wrap up our pilgrimage today with a visit to the Guinness factory dating back to the 1700s, making Guinness for people around the whole world.
To make beer, you need 4 ingredients: fermentable grain, water, hops, and yeast. Once you have that, it's pretty broad. You can mess around with that quite a lot.
Also our farewell dinner with the pilgrims, and just some lasting memories that they'll have of Ireland.
The leprechaun. And nowadays very jolly, the little dancing leprechaun. Woo, welcome to Ireland, have a nice day, yeah? But back then he was seen as a darker, more mischievous character. We said he'd been thrown out of the Feywild for being physically imperfect, and he wasn't too happy about this at all. And he took it out on humans at night time, leading them astray with drinking and gambling. Don't be out, at night time. The leprechaun will be waiting to lead you astray. Will I play the wild rover? I'll ever go.
Well, thank you, Father Gary, and thank you all for joining us on this pilgrimage to Ireland. We'd especially like to thank Catholic Communications from the Diocese of Springfield, our videographer, Bill Pacocha, who was joining us.
I'd also like to thank John Paul Pilgrimages for putting this pilgrimage together.
And all of you for tuning in to this pilgrimage coverage of Ireland.
God bless you.
God bless.
Wow, breathtaking, magnificent, memorable, all of those things and more. And I'm sure all of the pilgrims will remember this trip for a long time. Thanks so much to our tour guides and pilgrimage leaders, Father Matthew and Father Gary, and to Bill Pacocha for editing all of these wonderful segments. And for this week, that's Reel to Reel. Remember, you can stay informed on all of the happenings here in the Diocese of Springfield and beyond by logging on to iobserve.org. There you will find up-to-the-minute news on our church locally and around the world. That's iobserve.org. And don't forget to also like us at Catholic Communications on Facebook. We will be back here next week at this same time for another edition of Reel to Reel, your window on the world around you. Have a great week.
Reel to Reel is a production of the Catholic Communications Corporation, funded in part by the annual Catholic Appeal, and the support of you, our faithful viewers.